Morning. Can everybody hear me? Good morning. There we go. I want to welcome you this morning to UMW Sunday, United Methodist Women. At this time, would all the members of the Walters Evers Circle stand as you're able? And the members of the Wednesday Night Alive, please stand. At this time, the purpose should be on the screen. And we'll recite it together. The organized unit of United Methodist Women shall be a community of women whose purpose is to know God and to experience freedom as whole persons through Jesus Christ, to develop creative, supportive fellowship, and to expand concepts of mission through participation in the global ministries of the church. At this time, would everybody else please stand and we'll greet each other in neighbor friendship.
Good morning. Everybody likes to be on a long semester here.
Good morning. Would you please stand as you are able and join me in the call to worship? We have come today to worship God and to give thanks for the women who are organized for mission. We recognize United Methodist Women as a group called by God to be an integral part of the church. United Methodist Women are faith, hope, love in action. Would you please remain standing and join us in our hymn of praise, Just a Closer Walk with Thee.
There it goes. Now you guys can hear me. Because we got a lot of stuff going on in the church. Oh my goodness, do we have a lot of stuff going on in the church. So first of all, I want to talk to you guys next week about the Back to Church picnic. It is next Sunday, but it's at 4 p.m. So it's after, we'll have church, and then at 4 p.m. we're going to come and have, I can't remember if it's hamburgers and hot dogs or what it is, but all that stuff that you would have. We're having bounce houses. Revive will be here. We're going to do some singing. We're going to do some worshiping, do a whole bunch of stuff out in front of the church. We're having the street closed. We're providing the meats and everything, but I have a list, and so hopefully people will sign up. If not, I'll be calling to see. But I figured just picnic foods like potato salads, baked beans, any side dish if you want to be specific. Vegetable trays if you want fresh fruit because we're still in that season. Cakes, desserts, and cookies. I'm going to leave it over here with 2 pens. If you guys feel the spirit move you to bring something, because I know lots of you guys do cakes and desserts and brownies and cookies and everything. So please, please, please sign up for those things. I think that was the only thing I needed to talk about. So that'll be over there. So how are you guys today? Good. How's school going? Good. Well, we have a lot to talk about. I have a question. How do you guys show people that you care about them? How do you show them you care about them, Maddie? Oh, there you go. If somebody is in a bad mood, and how do you know they're in a bad mood? Maybe they're just walking around like that, right? Yeah, we can smile. We can hopefully cheer them up. How would you guys show somebody you cared about them? What could we do? You could give them a hug. That would be cool, wouldn't it? Yeah, that'd be really good. We could do them a favor. Maybe if somebody is, you know what, maybe mom went grocery shopping and she's got like 20 bags in her arms. Could you like take 2 of them? Yeah, that would help, wouldn't it? It would help relieve some of the load. And guess what? If we took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then she wouldn't have very many, would she? And her load would certainly be lightened, wouldn't it? Yeah, so there's lots of things that we can do for not just our parents, but everybody out there, right? Well, you know what? Miss Larissa is going to share a snack with you guys too, okay? Have you seen those shareable M&Ms at Walmart that have the cool sayings on them? You're so awesome. I'm going to share my M&Ms with you, some of those little things. Those are so cool. You could share your M&Ms because it's a bag that's too big, and so we can share it with everybody else, right? Yeah. So at the end, Caitlin's going to come up here and she's going to give you guys some snack, okay? But the best way is to show by doing nice things that we can do every single day, just by saying hi to somebody, can't we? Yeah. Someone who is sick, maybe nowadays we don't want to be around them because they're sick, but we want to check on them, don't we? So maybe we can give them a phone call to make sure that they're doing okay, right? Or send them a card. Yeah, just to make sure that they know that. Well, you know what? Jesus was always kind and nice, wasn't he? Anytime he was around somebody, he was always nice. So one day he was at the home of Simon Peter, and Jesus went into his mother-in-law, who was sick in bed with a fever, and he took her hand and he said, "Get up." And guess what? Her fever was all gone, and she was all healed. And so later that night, lots of people had heard about that, so they brought people who were sick, people who were possessed, to come to Jesus. And do you think Jesus said, "Nope, don't have time for it"? No, definitely not. Jesus never said that, did he? No, he healed all of the sick people. He got out all the demon-possessed, and he was caring by just his healing touch. So the next time that we want to show people that we care, remember all of those acts of kindness that we talked about. And remember all the stuff that Jesus did, right? Because he did a lot in the Bible, didn't he? Did you know that UMW, do you know what even UMW stands for? What do you think the U stands for? Because it's in our church. First, United. And then what do you think the M, Methodist, starts for what? What do you think the W stands for? Because it's a whole bunch of, it's not men, but yes, it's United Methodist Women. We also have United Methodist Men too, but this is a group of women who get together and they do lots of different mission projects. And so they have done prayer tins for themselves and for other people. They can hand them out, and it's just a little bitty tin that when you open it up, it has a piece of paper and a pencil in it, and they can write their prayers down and any concerns, and it's a good thing for them to remember who they're praying for. In a couple weeks, they're going to be doing these, which are jump ropes. I don't know if you guys have ever seen these. You know, we do those boxes of Operation Christmas Child. Guess what? These are t-shirts made into jump ropes. Isn't that cool? Taking something we don't need anymore, and we can make a jump rope and send it to a little kid who has a jump rope. Wouldn't that be fun? And then another project that they did, that guess what? They sent some for you guys. These are called little pocket prayers. And guess what? There is a cross in there, if you can feel it, and they sewed these, And they made them just for you guys, little Spider-Mans. But you know what? You put these in your pocket, and as you're going through your day, maybe you have a big test and you go, oh gosh, Lord, I totally forgot to study as hard as I should. Help me through this test and help me remember the answers. Just something, a little pocket, so you guys can have that. So all of these things are made by these women, and they do so many different mission projects throughout the year, which is kind of cool. And so this is the week that we celebrate all the things that those women have done. Isn't that cool? Yeah. So you guys get to take two things. You guys get a pocket prayer, and you get some M&Ms. How's that sound? So let's hand those out really quick. Do you guys want Spider-Man? I have Spider-Man. I have doggies. I have little flowers. Do you want Spider-Mans? Probably don't want flowers, huh? Do you want a Spider-Man? There you go. Do you want dogs or flowers, Maddie? Dogs. Where did I put the dogs? Here you go. Okay, so we're going to hold these pocket prayers. Can you guys hold these really, really tight in your hands? And there's a little thing on the other side, okay? So let's say a prayer together, okay? Jesus taught us how to care for others. Help us to follow in his examples and his footsteps, and always show others how we care for them by showing kindness and giving them the love that they deserve. In your name we pray, and what do we say? Amen. Good job, guys. Yeah, you guys have a lot of stuff to take back, don't you?
You may remain seated while we sing our second hymn, Shall We Gather at the River, on page 723. Our first scripture reading this morning is from John 3, verses 16 to 18, and 23 and 24. This is how we know what love is. Jesus laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. And this is his command, to believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and to love one another as he commanded us. The one who keeps God's commands lives in him, and he in them. And this is how we know that he lives in us. We know it by the Spirit he gave us.
At this time, we're going to recognize the women, UMW women that have passed before us in 2020. Today, we celebrate the lives of our sisters Betty Banks, Aileen Bryant, Betty Burton, Adabelle Coling, Eleanor Miller, and Norma Ward, who have been called home to be with God. We remember the work and the names of these women who served Christ during their lives. Now they are remembered with love as they stand in the presence of God who called them home. At this time, we'd like to have Jason and Bob Loss come forward. The dedicated life service is a tradition of the Great Plains Conference of United Methodist Women. The dedicated light is symbolic of the light of Jesus shining in dark places, bringing joy and hope to those who walk in darkness. The dedicated light symbolizes the commitment to the purpose of the United Methodist Women. As God's women, we continue to be faithful through prayer, study, service, and gifts of money for mission work nearby and around the world. Today we join our dedicated life gift to honor and remember Marilyn Loss, who has been significant in the lives of United Methodist Women throughout our local unit. We give thanks for her work with the Prayer Shaw Mission and other volunteer times as she shared her love for God. We could always count on Marilyn to share her talents and her time, not only for UMW, but also for First United Methodist Church. We light this candle as a witness of faith that she is blessed with us. And we also are going to give a certificate to Jason and Bob. Francis, you want to come help me? Francis? I can't get the light. Oh. Okay, there we go. I couldn't get it. Thank you.
It's going.
It's going. It's going. It is my privilege this morning to introduce our guest speaker, who is Diana Webster. She couldn't join us today because she's preaching at her host church, Bushton and Claflin. But we had the privilege of hearing her this spring. She was the speaker at our Hutchinson District Spiritual Retreat, and several of us got to listen to her and her message on why waste a good crisis and how she is dealing with her COVID that she had suffered with. We wanted to share that message with others because it was so enlightening. So at this time, we will hear Diana via video.
And Evie, you need to turn your mic off. We're getting a lot of background noise from you. Sorry. United Methodist pastors who are licensed but not ordained have to go through a process called DCOM, District Committee on Ministry, every year. And in that process, a committee decides whether or not you are serving the Lord and whether or not you are meeting all the requirements. Well, Evie happens to be on my committee. And when we were talking back in November, December, whenever it was, around the table, the subject came up of COVID, and yes, I'd had it. And I said, and I think I'm really glad I had it. And I wish you could have seen Evie's face. It was like, you are? So that's how you got to hear me today. But I'm not going to give you a blow-by-blow, play-by-play. You don't need that. You've already heard it. But I am going to give you maybe a different perspective on it. So here is why waste a good crisis. There's a sign in a math classroom that reads, "In this room, there are no mistakes, only opportunities." And the teacher admits that while it takes a while to get some students thinking adjusted so that they quit seeing incorrect answers as failures, when they can overcome that, she says, the changed attitude works miracles with their overall learning and throughout the whole class. Today, I'd like us to adopt a similar mindset as we think about crises. Now, I know that the title of my presentation is an oxymoron and therefore technically impossible, but I'd like you to hang with me and let's see if we can resolve that. Somewhere around the time most of our churches shut down their in-person worship because of COVID, our bishop asked all the Great Plains pastors and lay leaders to read a book entitled How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going by Susan Beaumont. Now, I'm only a part-time local pastor, so as far as I know, there was no follow-up, at least from me, on this. But like the good girl that I sometimes am, I went ahead and read the book and underlined all the things that were new to me, things that might be important sometime, or things that seemed to fit the congregations I serve. One of the things that I underlined with a wavy line, meaning really important, was a quote at the very bottom of page 43 that Beaumont attributes to William Barry in his book, Paying Attention to God, Discernment in Prayer. And this is what it says. When I surrender, I accept my experience as something that must be by necessity, so that I can learn what I need to learn to become what I need to become in order to embrace my future. And because you haven't read that 20 times in the last 2 days, I'm going to read it again. When I surrender, I accept my experience as something that must be by necessity, so that I can learn what I need to learn to become what I need to become in order to embrace my future. I guess that soaked into my brain because when I came down with COVID-19 sometime later, that really was my mindset. although I didn't realize it at the time. I remember being fairly sick, but also that I was not dangerously ill. I was very thankful that I read and wrote for a living because that I could do. Moving around in those days was not so good, but sitting at my desk poring over Bibles and commentaries, writing worship services and emailing them to our church secretary so that she could mail or email them to the congregation because we're not equipped for live anything or even recorded, that seemed to be all right. And during those sleepless nights that accompanied COVID for so many of us, I worked a jigsaw puzzle. I hadn't done a puzzle in years, and I remember enjoying spending gentle time with the pieces that all seemed to look the same, and being so pleased when the puzzle pieces began to take shape. I remember that my tulips bloomed later last year than they have this year, and mine were especially pretty and lasted a long time. I needed that beauty. A parishioner friend of mine brought me a French garden of beautiful flowers without knowing that I was sick. When my husband brought them up to me, I understood them as a sign from God that I would recover. All through this time, I had a deep sense of peace. I'm sure that had our churches been open for public worship, and if I had been expected to physically show up at the office and actually preach on Sundays, I might have felt differently. But they weren't, and I've always considered that a blessing for me. I wasn't bound by an alarm clock. I didn't have anywhere to go or anyone to see, well, because I couldn't. And I could do what needed to be done at a slower pace, resting when I needed to. All through this, I had a sense of waiting and listening, a feeling that God was leading me somewhere I hadn't been before and was teaching me along the way. Today, I am honestly glad I was able to experience COVID without being deathly ill, so that I might be more compassionate toward others. And this is where I find myself today, more compassionate toward others, but also toward myself, which is a very new thing for me. 8.5 months after contracting COVID, I finally felt as if I was back to my normal self with just a few minor restrictions. After an entire year, though, I'm not so sure. Probably I will need to be careful the rest of my life. My lungs seem to be damaged, though the effects come and go and seemingly for no apparent reason. Some days I wake up knowing it will not be a good day. Other days are fine, until they aren't. And some days are fine, sometimes for several days in a row. Some days I can cut and hang sheetrock in the rooms upstairs that we're remodeling. Other days, it's an effort just to walk up and down the stairs. There seems to be no rhyme or reason for this. I just never know. But still, I don't feel sorry for myself. And not even sad about what I used to be able to do. I'm not anxious about the future. I'm not resentful that my husband, who was an asymptomatic carrier and gave me the disease, thank you, dear. I'm not resentful that he is able to enjoy life just like he always did. My sense of peace remains. For me, COVID was not a crisis, and it still is not a crisis, but rather it's an opportunity. Now, for so many people, it was and continues to be a crisis, sometimes a deadly crisis. For them, life will never be anything like what it used to be. and I don't mean to minimize their experience at all. But for me, it has become an opportunity. And as I've pondered this phenomenon, I have thought about how I have always reacted to crises. Because some years life was one crisis after another, or even a whole bunch of them at once. Like most of you, we raised kids, we worked, we had family, crises, sometimes many at once. In the past, when I saw a crisis coming, my normal reaction was to try to avert that crisis at any cost. When our kids were growing up, we were both school music teachers, which meant we were conducting concerts until the day school got out, besides taking students to sing and play at community Christmas events and nursing homes and all the rest. It was just a busy time. And when school was out, we were using our musical talents to bless church and community events, including those late night Christmas Eve services. Musicians, it seems, never need to sleep. So family coming on Christmas Day was always a crisis, especially if Christmas happened to be on a Sunday, because that meant doing music at church in addition to getting ready for family. So my efforts to avert the crisis included cooking and baking everything in advance so that at least I wasn't up all night on Christmas Eve just in order to set out dinner Christmas noon. Thank goodness we had children. Usually they kept people entertained so no one guessed I couldn't wait for them to leave so I could collapse and then fix supper. In the event that I failed to avert a crisis, there was often Plan B, which was to minimize the effects of the crisis. I remember one year I invited our Sunday school class over for Sunday lunch in honor of my husband's birthday. I had baked an apple pie for the event. Now, when I bake a fruit pie, I like the thick, bubbly juice to ooze out through the slits in the crust before I take that pie out of the oven. I don't know what happened that Saturday night, but for some reason, that crust burned. I took a knife and tried to scrape off the burned spots, but I just couldn't get them off without poking a hole in the crust, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't have time to bake another pie, so in desperation, I mixed up some powdered sugar icing and spread it all over that crust. That way, at least you couldn't tell it was burned by looking at it, and I hoped maybe the icing would cover up the burned taste. I gotta tell you, our guests thought that was the best apple pie they had ever eaten. And that was crazy because so many of those people are excellent cooks. That Plan B was a success. However, there are times when Plan B simply does not exist. So Plan C must be followed, which is keep a stiff upper lip, endure, and return to normal ASAP. You know, sweep everything under the rug, forget about it, don't cry over spilt milk and that kind of stuff. COVID has taught me that there is another way to cope with crisis, and that is to lean into the experience as it is happening, to own the problem, and to prayerfully discern what God can teach me through the process. No, I'm not very good at this yet. I still come unglued over the little things, like family coming for Christmas. Big things like car accidents involving my husband or daughters, or having a child born with a cleft lip and palate that required 21 surgeries within the space of 19 years, those I can cope with. Thank goodness they don't happen every day, but the little things often do. And so I have to keep reminding myself, like those math students, that whatever is happening is not a crisis, but rather an opportunity for God to teach me. Through those little opportunities, God is teaching me patience, of course, but also things like joy in the moment, regardless of what's going on around me, and especially endurance. But not the endurance as just get through this, but rather the endurance like God shows when He is present with us in the midst of our sinfulness, but loves us anyway, and continues to hold the door open for us to come to Him. The original psalm that Evie had that we were going to read responsively this morning was Psalm 136, I think. And the response line for that is, "For His mercy endures forever." We ended up reading Psalm 118, which has that every once in a while. But in Psalm 136, it was, "For His mercy endures forever," blah, blah, blah. "For His mercy endures forever." And I want to ask you, as you would read a psalm like that, what emotion would you attach to the verb endures? Would it be the eye-rolling, come on, hurry up endurance? Or the weary, trudging endurance over long periods of time? Or the patient, long-suffering endurance for things that cannot be helped or changed? Or would it be a sense of consistency over time? Because that's just who God is. The endurance that I am learning from God is more like that consistency over time. And this kind of endurance carries with it peace and love and acceptance and its own kind of joy. That kind of endurance seems to heal rather than count the seconds ticking by. God's endurance looks forward with hope. It seeks out ways to be a blessing to others. It lifts others up with encouraging words. It does not dwell on the problems that can't be changed, nor does it look back to the good old days. This is the kind of endurance that I'm learning as I cope with the effects of COVID. And notice that I said learning. It's a process, a reconditioning of my attitudes. And since I'm old, it is slow and slow and slow, but little bit by little bit. As I consider my life of moving forward after a life change that I did not anticipate, I think about the Israelites from Judah who were carried away into captivity in Babylon. Their crisis was that through the years, their kings had established God's dwelling place as the temple in Jerusalem. In order to properly worship Yahweh God, people were to come to the temple in Jerusalem. Now, not only were they in a foreign land where there was no temple, but the temple in Jerusalem had been destroyed. So how could they possibly worship God away from Jerusalem? And even if they did get to go home, how could they find God since the temple was destroyed? It was a religious crisis. But out of that crisis, God caused something beautiful to happen. The Jews in Babylon were by and large those with skills and learning. They were the leaders in the Judean society. They got together and decided, since everything upon which they based their faith had been lost, perhaps they should make sure that there was a way for future generations to remain faithful to Yahweh God. And so they began collecting, compiling, and editing the faith stories that they had. By the time the Jews were allowed to return to Jerusalem, they carried with them documentation for who they were, why they were, and whose they were. What we know today as Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and some of the rest of the Old Testament are largely due to the work of those priests and scribes who trekked all the way to Babylon and back. Crisis? Yes, but perhaps not the crisis as they envisioned it, because I really doubt that they would have thought it necessary to gather and organize the stories of faith journeys of their ancestors if they hadn't needed to. And that brings me to wonder about another question. Is there really such a thing as a crisis? I mean, really, if we believe that God is actually in control and that God works for good always, then there is never a crisis, at least in God's mind. We may see a circumstance as a crisis because we can't envision the big picture, but I think that God perhaps tends to see it as an opportunity to teach. Not that I think God routinely goes around looking for ways to cause us trouble the way Satan did with Job, just in order to teach us. But I do think that God is willing to use every event in our lives to draw us closer, if we will let him. I think letting God use the situation to teach is the key. It's the attitude reconditioning. It's what changes a crisis into an opportunity. It's what William Barry said, "When I surrender, I accept my experience as something that must be, by necessity, so that I can learn what I need to learn, to become what I need to become, in order to embrace my future." There are those for whom the future stopped with COVID. I cannot speak for them. I only speak for myself. For me, COVID has been a blessing. No, I can't do all the things I used to do. My stamina is very limited. I get sinus infections way too easily. A full day of running around wipes me out for 3 days. But I am more than I used to be, more alive, more at peace, more accepting of myself and others, more not needing to control everything. And please don't tell my daughters that. I would hate for them to have to revise their opinion of their dear old mom. I'm more able to see beauty. I'm more grateful. And interestingly, more frightened when I can't seem to find God. Okay, back to my title's oxymoron, good crisis. On the one hand, there is no such thing as a crisis because God is ultimately in control. A crisis is only our delusional perception of a situation. On the other hand, though, all crises are good because, in God's hands, they all become opportunities for God to teach and for us to learn. Crises become opportunities to experience grace in ways we didn't know were possible. So, if we accept this thinking as true, why would anyone ever want to waste a good crisis? Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to honor some special people. UMW honors special people by presenting them with a gold pin. We ask all First United Methodist members to nominate someone who has made or is continuing to make a difference in the life of the church. These folks may be quietly and consistently volunteering behind the scenes. They may be out in front taking initiative and making First United's mission real in our community and in the world. Our first recipient is Susan Tamman. If you'd like to come forward. Susan is best known as our talented pianist and organist. She has provided us with so much great music over the years, not only as an accompanist for the choir and congregational singing, but special music numbers, funeral services, and various other events at our church and in the community. Many of us remember Susan as being a founder member and playing a keyboard in the popular 4th Street Cafe group who led us at our Saturday night worship time in the fellowship hall. Susan has been a faithful member of several committees and teams within the church over a great many years. In fact, she was raised in the First United Methodist Church. She has served as pastor present on the worship team, committee on nominations, lay leadership committee, youth leadership team, and probably some more that we've missed. Congratulations, Susan. Our next recipient is Jan Sherman. If you'd like to come forward, Jan. That's why I had you bring sweetbread. I'd make sure you were going to be here. Jan has been a member of the Wednesday Night Alive Circle of the United Methodist Women and served many years as their treasurer. She has been involved in everything that circle has been involved in with, and that's quite a bit. She has been a tireless worker in the Unity Sunday School class and the multitude of Christian endeavors this class has participated over the years. Jan is current and longtime member of the Scholarship Committee. She has been a member of the Missions Ministry team and is in charge of international missions. She will soon be very busy spearheading the annual Operation Christmas Child Shoebox Project. The empty boxes will be coming soon for Samaritan's Purse. Also under international missions, she is in charge of our assistance with Fellow Man International's Honduras mission and works closely with missionary Lisa Armstrong to assist children, their parents, and communities in support of schools, healthcare, malnutrition, and so forth in Honduras. Also in line with our church's support for the Honduras mission, Jan handles the annual money raiser silent auction for Honduras for additional funds for this project. On a lighter note, Jan guides us through our church version of the yearly March Madness basketball tournament. The winner with the best bracket is awarded the golden basketball, and they get to keep it until next year's contest. Congratulations, Jan. At this point, I just kind of want to mention some things. Larissa mentioned UMW is going to be making the jump ropes. We're still needing t-shirts. On October the 13th at 5:30 down in Fellowship Hall, we're going to be putting those together. You don't have to be a UMW member. You don't have to be a woman. Anybody can come and make the jump ropes for us. So the more people, the merrier to come join us for some fellowship. We're also going to be working on our Samaritan's Purse, or the Children's Christmas boxes coming up. And in December, we always do Christmas plates for our shut-ins and for people that have suffered a bereavement through the years. So you'll be hearing us needing cookies in December. We have, as soon as the service is over, we've got little treats for you in the back. Each of you can pick up the I always have trouble saying it's the pocket prayer quilt. UMW ladies made this. I just want to read the poem on the back. It says, this pocket prayer quilt was made especially for you to slip into your pocket. Throughout the day, when your fingers touch the cross inside the quilt, be mindful of God's love and grace for you. Keep it as a tangible symbol of God's peace. We made this to kind of celebrate our church opening back up after COVID. And if you feel in there, there is a little cross. You can just put in your pocket, put in your coat pocket, your purse, backpack, just to kind of remind you that God's with you every day. At this point, if you'd please join me in the Lord's Prayer. If you'd please stand, stand and join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Let's don't do the last song, because it's late. Okay. At this time, we're just going to have the benediction. As we go forth, enable us to center ourselves for renewal in your presence, commitment to your mission and ministry with the least of these here and around the world. Equip us with your Holy Spirit to witness to your love and power, healing and reconciliation, nurturance and new life. Inspire us once again to be the tellers of the old story in every new context, that Jesus has come so that all may have life, in fact, more than life. Thank you guys for attending today. Appreciate it. Go back and get some snacks.